Hello, EduGladiators. Welcome to our podcast, The Arena. We are excited to have a new episode for you today. I'm Marlena Gross-Taylor, founder of EduGladiators, and I am super excited to talk to one of my favorite authors, Rich Czyz. I actually have his book here. Some of you might be familiar with the 4 O'Clock Faculty. And we're going to talk a little bit about this and a rumor about a new book. But first, let's meet Rich. So, Rich, say hello to all of the warriors in the arena and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rich Czyz. I am currently an elementary principal in New Jersey, formerly in the curriculum realm, and formerly a 5th grade classroom teacher and basic skills teacher and instructional coach, and a long line of different roles. But excited to be here and excited to talk about the 4 O'Clock Faculty book, as well as some impending rumors.
We can't wait to hop in it. So how about we do that right now?
Sure.
Okay, so everyone, Rich, has a story about how they got involved in education. For me, I actually said I would never be an educator. Grew up in a family of educators. Mom retired as a middle school principal, and she laughs daily at what I do now and how involved I am now. But that was my journey. I didn't want to do it, then had kids, and now I want to know everything about it. And I'm so glad that I'm involved and can be a warrior for kids. But what's your story? How did you get involved in education?
Yeah, for me, it started with coaching. So, from the time I was 15 years old and I stopped playing baseball, I had started coaching. So I worked along with my dad and also another friend's dad who coached us as Little League players. And like I said, from the time I stopped playing, I started coaching with them. I was working with 6 to 9-year-olds on one team. I was coaching another team of 10 to 12-year-olds, and absolutely loved being around kids, loved coaching baseball. And I actually went to school not knowing that I was going to become a teacher. I graduated with a degree in political science after 4 years of college, and had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So I kind of ended up in a job that wasn't working out for me, and couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And eventually I kind of found a program where I could get my teaching certification. I knew that I loved working with kids and students, and that's ultimately where I wanted to be. So that's kind of how I fell into education. 4 classes, they gave me a certification after I student taught, and I was hired on August 27th and handed a class roster of 27 kids, and off we went. So it was awesome, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Awesome. I love hearing everyone's story, because I often say, school is the common denominator for most people in our country, right? Like, we've all gone to primarily public school, but others, maybe some other choices, but that is like our one common experience. Mm-hmm. And I feel that our experiences definitely impact who we are and what we do. So when I first read, I ordered this as soon as you released it, I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this guy, right? Because it's your 4 O'Clock Faculty is all about really redefining how we approach professional development. So what was your inspiration? Like, what experiences, either from your journey as a student, from your journey as an educator, led you to write this book?
So it kind of started with my own PD experience. As I said, I came into the profession not having kind of any undergrad background in teaching. I went through 4 classes. It was 2 classes in the summer, 2 in the fall. I student taught, and then, someone deemed that I was ready to take over a classroom, which, I was unprepared to do. And I think the key kind of came in my first year. And, I talk about it in the book. There was a time when our district was implementing a new writing rubric, and we went through a year-long training, which, I commend the district on to this day, because it's not very often that when a district is doing something like that, like implementing a new, writing program or rubric, that they're giving teachers continuous PD on it. And that was the one thing that our school did really well. The difference, though, for me was that I was a math teacher. So I was teaching math and science at the time. I wasn't using the writing rubric, and I ended up sitting in these meetings every month on the new writing rubric and was not going back to the classroom to use it with my students. And the big mistake that I made was, walking back up to my classroom afterwards with my colleague who was also a math and science teacher. And the biggest thing that we did was complain about it. We complained about it to each other and then went about our business and never did anything about it. And it wasn't until the final meeting of the year. So we finally got to June and we said, this is a waste of our time. We went to our principal and said, hey, can we use this meeting time this month to talk about our math curriculum? And, she was gracious and said, absolutely. Looking back on it, I wish I would have started with that opportunity in September instead of waiting all year to do that. And then when I became an administrator, I had the opportunity to kind of see what professional development looked like. I went into a new district. I got to sit through a PD day. I was looking for a teacher and couldn't find that teacher. And when I asked around, someone had told me that the person had taken off for the day. And I couldn't believe it, because professional development to me is one of those days where you absolutely want to be there. You want to learn new things. And when I came back after the long weekend, I looked at our staff attendance for that professional development day. And we had nearly 30% of our staff who was taking the day off to make it a 4-day weekend. And what that told me is that we were not doing enough as administrators to make the learning meaningful and relevant for our staff. And so that's where we wanted to make sure that we were doing everything we could to improve professional development. And that's kind of where it stems from, both of those experiences.
Wow, thank you for that. A couple of things that you mentioned that really stuck out to me is that, first of all, that you reflected about the PD that you were providing as a building leader, right? I wish more leaders would think about that. I know every state is a little bit different. Like you're in Jersey, I'm from the South and I've worked in a lot of different states in the South. Some states that I've worked in, PD was mandatory, right? And so I think that could cause a little bit of resentment, especially if it's not really great PD. Right. But even in places like yours where, they have maybe a little bit, it sounds like maybe a little bit more flexibility, the fact that you looked at the PD and the attendance and you were willing to change your approach is absolutely phenomenal to leaders. The second thing you mentioned was how you wish you would have gone to your administrator as a teacher, earlier in the year. You have a chapter in your book that is focused on chapter 11, dealing with disappointing PD. Mm-hmm. So I know we have teachers and leaders, parents, all kinds of people that impact kids listening to our podcast, but what advice would you give particularly teachers, but also leaders that have to go to mandated principal meetings? What would you give either of those groups advice on in dealing with disappointing PD?
I think the biggest thing is taking charge of your own professional development. And, I feel like that was the mistake that I made early on in my career is assuming that somebody else is planning what's best for me and knows what's best for me. And sometimes it's not even a person intentionally not planning what's best for me, but not being capable of, whether it's mandated things or, any number of reasons that are getting in the way of planning meaningful and relevant learning for me or for any other educator for that matter. So, the biggest secret that I always tell everyone is principals and building administrators and those who are tasked with planning professional development, they would love the help, so a staff member who's an expert on something coming to me and saying, hey, at our next staff meeting, why don't we do this? Gladly. There are days when our staff meeting is coming up and it's starting at 3:45 and at 3:15 I'm coming up with the agenda. So, it's one of those things where I always tell everyone, any administrator who's planning PD would welcome those who would be willing to help out and share their expertise. And I think that's the biggest piece is no one is going to give you exactly what you need. In some cases, there will be mandated things, there will be district initiatives and things like that, but you really have to take charge of your own PD.
I love that. I do love the idea of having your teachers, or if you're a principal, or maybe you're a supervisor or a district office personnel, and you're planning PD for principals, having the people that you're planning the PD be a part of the planning, and really leveraging the genius of that group to help deliver some of that PD. We all know that teachers learn best from teachers. Like, that's a common phrase that we use in education. So why not have teachers be a critical piece of presenting or facilitating PD, right, for other teachers, and same for leaders. One of the other chapters that I really like in your book, or sections in your book, you talk about hashtag coffee EDU. Mm-hmm. And I don't think enough people probably know about that. I think people maybe are doing versions of that, but I really love that hashtag and what it stands for. Can you talk a little bit about what hashtag coffee EDU means?
Yeah, so I first learned about coffee EDU from AJ Bianco.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a New Jersey educator. And he was kind of promoting one that he was doing in North Jersey. And we're kind of located, before I was in South Jersey, and now I'm kind of located centrally in New Jersey. But the idea is you show up on a Saturday or Sunday morning at a coffee shop, at a diner, which are popular here. And, it's a 1 hour informal discussion with passionate educators. And I think that's the key, is you have people who are showing up, who are taking time out of their day, taking time away from their families, on a Saturday or Sunday morning. We like to do ours bright and early on Sunday mornings, so that you're kind of in and out. It's an hour, and making sure that you're, just sharing those conversations. There's no formal agenda. It's, it's a conversation first. And I think you learn a lot and connect with different educators. And what I love about the group that we now have going here in New Jersey, we have some from New Jersey, some from local Pennsylvania districts. And it is all, variety of different educators, superintendents, teachers, principals. We have school nurses who participate. It is something where everyone is there for the learning and there to grow. And it's a super powerful, easy to implement thing. So if you have, what I always say in the book is, you want to find those rogue educators, those people who are willing to learn with you. And even if it's one other person, then the two of you are getting together to have that coffee, once a month on a weekend. It's an important learning experience for everyone involved.
Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely a hashtag that I think more people should start using. I do feel like there are definitely groups of educators that get together probably pretty regularly, and just to use that hashtag coffee EDU and let other people know and share, like, this is how we're connecting and growing with each other, I think is absolutely awesome. It changes the culture, right?
Absolutely.
Like it changes the culture. And you do talk about changing culture through being a rogue, through this rogue approach for PD, which I really love. So my last question before I want to address the rumor. My last question that I have that I would love to get your insight on from your book, The 4 O'Clock Faculty, is I would love for you to share about how do we extend the PD, this rogue approach, which I absolutely love, to our parents. We know it takes a village to raise kids, right? And we're part of that village as their teachers, their principal, as their EA, whatever it might be. But our parents are a critical piece of the village that we want to make sure that we're working in tandem with. So how do we extend some of these ideas you present in your book to help our parents?
I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest successes in education recently has been kind of the explosion of the EdCamp movement, where, teachers and educators are showing up passionate about what they do, showing up without a formalized agenda, choosing what sessions are going to happen that day. And a few years back, I learned about a principal in Pennsylvania named Joe Mazza, who, planned out something called Family Camp. And the idea was to bring parents in, to have them learn about what's happening in the school, to have parents share their expertise. And I think that can be a really powerful tool to kind of extend that professional learning to everyone. Invite parents in for those learning opportunities. Invite the experts that you have in the building, whether it's, someone who owns a local restaurant, whether it is someone who is an author or a book editor, or, we had this year a parent who works with a rescue dog. And he actually brought his rescue dog into our building, shared that with our students. So I think those powerful connections that you can make with parents, can really extend that learning that is taking place for everyone, parents, teachers, and students. And, I think Family Camp is really a great way to kind of make that connection, bring parents in, show them what you're doing in terms of curriculum and instruction within the building, having them bring their expertise, their feedback to the process. And I think it could be helpful for everyone involved.
Great. I totally agree. I think nowadays, especially the parents, we always talk about the kids in our classrooms have changed, right? They're Gen Zers and even the next generation, which is a podcast topic in and of itself. But I don't know if we really pay attention to the generation of our parents. And so our parents are in a different generation than our parents, you and I's parents,
Right.
So we have to pay attention to that. And I think now when we hear, I just kind of cringe when I see schools saying, oh, we're having a literacy night, a parent literacy night, or math night. There, many times they're just so static that parents are just kind of over it because it hasn't been too long before they had to bring their parents to that maybe, or, they're not too far removed from being a student themselves. So I love the idea of having a family ed camp night using that approach and just having a more dynamic experience for parents to learn. Okay, Warriors, I know you're waiting for this because I'm so excited about it. Rich, rumor is, a word on the street is that there is a second book coming from your beautiful brain. Can we talk about that today?
Absolutely. So there is a second book. I am currently in the kind of editing phase, cover art, all that sort of fun stuff that goes along with coming up with a book. So the title is The Secret Sauce, and it is kind of about my journey into education and how unprepared I was as an educator, and kind of the rules that I was told would work for me and help me, and handed a 300-page guide that guided me through lesson plans and those first couple of days of school, and how really unprepared I was and what I learned from that experience.
I love it. Guys, I've had the opportunity to have a sneak peek, so I'm really excited about it. I can't wait until you have it in your hands. And I love it because it is about that journey. I mentioned earlier about my journey and how I got involved. And I don't think I clarified for you, Rich, is that I was very similar to you. My undergrad is not in education because I said I never wanted to do that, right? And so when I made that pivot after having children, much like you, I had to take, a few more classes at LSU as a non-matriculating student so I could earn my teaching certificate, but I did not go through that piece, right? So first day of school, I am like freaking out. Mm-hmm. I remember calling my mom before the bell rang for the kids to come in class. Now, I was really freaking out. I said, Mom, I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't been trained in that particular way, in the traditional way of a teacher. And I don't know. I don't want to mess these kids up. Like, I don't want to ruin their experience. Sure. And my mom told me, she said, just teach them how you want it to be taught. Teach them as if those kids coming in were yours. Love them like you love the children you just had, right? Personally. And that's how I approached, and I still approach education, as if those kids are mine, as if teach them how I want it to be taught, being very diligent of being well-read and educated, of the latest, greatest, strategies and approaches, and figuring out what would work well for any particular group of kids. I say all that because you have a chapter that speaks about every child every day. Mm-hmm. I would love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that kind of comes from just the experience of going into the classroom, being, told a rule like don't smile until Christmas. And, that was the first thing I was told is, you have to establish that, you have structure and you have discipline, and you're not going to have any fun until Christmas, because those kids need to know that you mean business and you're serious. And it's one of those things where, you know what, there are a lot of kids who need that smile every day. And it is, upon each of us as an educator to take care of every child that's in our classroom every day. And whether we're having a good day or a bad day, sometimes I leave the house in the morning and you're having a terrible day, and, you got stuck in traffic and everything went wrong that morning. And the moment I walk in that door, I have to turn all of that off and, make sure that I'm ready to be my best for the students that are in front of me that day. And I think that's where it kind of comes from. It's, every student every day, whether, they're having difficulties in the classroom, whether you're having difficulties that day, they're giving you their best most of the time. If there's something that's impeding their learning, usually there's an issue behind that. And, I kind of talk about that in some of the other chapters is, how do you build those relationships with students? How do you make sure that you're establishing that culture that is going to give every student their best opportunity to learn every day? And that's what it's all about.
Yes, could not agree more. I received a similar advice: be mean until Christmas, right? And I even remember because I actually started off in my old middle school that I went to school in, and so I respected the teachers that I literally had as teachers. And I remember one teacher saying, she knew I wore contacts. She said, you need to wear your glasses on the first couple of weeks, and then you can pull them down and look over your glasses if a student isn't behaving. And that's why I was freaking out. I was like, that is not me. Like, I love kids. I want them to know that they're loved. I want to push them. I want them to be their absolute best, whatever that best is for them. But I don't want to peer over my glasses to them, right. Like a throwback. So I love that chapter. I honestly feel like that was one of my favorite chapters that really just spoke to me, because to me, that is the heart of EduGladiators, of being that warrior for kids, and being what the kids need, whatever that might be, whatever our kids need. What advice would you give new teachers that are maybe freaking out right now because they start in August or September, they have a job, they're excited to go to their school, first time in a classroom that they're the lead teacher? What advice do you have for them right now? Maybe some things that they should be reflecting on, or some things that they should be doing or considering?
I would say the biggest piece I would start with is making those connections with kids. And, I think when you get that first teaching job, or, maybe you're leaving a district and you're moving to a new district and you're about to start, you kind of focus on all of those little things. How am I going to set up my classroom? What am I going to put on the walls? What's the curriculum like? You kind of start focusing on all of those things, and there's a million of them, and they'll all come with time. But I think the number one piece of advice I would give to someone who's a new teacher, or someone who's, starting in a new position, is connecting with those kids. So, taking the time to write a letter to every student over the summer, that goes a long way. And it goes a long way toward building that relationship, toward that student walking in on the first day and already knowing that you care about them. And I think that's the biggest piece is making those connections and building those relationships with students.
Thank you so much, Rich. This has been absolutely awesome. Warriors, those of you that are listening to our podcast right now, I'm telling you, if you have not picked up the 4 o'clock faculty, you want to make sure you pick that up. That is available for you everywhere books are sold. And be on the lookout. Yes, right here. Be on the lookout for the secret sauce. It is amazing. And if you have some ideas or maybe some thoughts that were triggered by today's conversation, and you want to get in contact with Rich, I want to make sure you can do that. So Rich, how can people connect with you if they'd like to talk further about your book, 4 o'clock faculty, or even secret sauce that's coming up, or maybe they just need a thought partner? How do they connect?
So on Twitter, at RACzyz, RACZYZ. And then the website is 4o'clockfaculty.com. So FOUR o'clockfaculty.com. and all the other information is on there. There's email addresses and that sort of stuff. Would love to help, share, collaborate, connect. So anybody who wants to reach out, that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you, Rich. And for our listeners, we will include this information also in the transcript. So whether you're listening to this on one of your podcast apps or you're watching this from our YouTube channel, we'll be sure to include this in the transcript so you can get connected with Rich. Rich, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes. And Warriors, again, please be sure to tune in every Saturday where we have our EduGladiators chat at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes, 4 questions that will get you pumped up, excited, and ready to be an EduGladiator for your student and for our profession. So until next time, we will see you in the arena, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.